G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting.
Good evening, gents. Mark, you finally made it?
Yes, mate. I'm here.
Half an hour late, but you didn't get any speeding fines, hopefully.
Well, actually, yeah, I'm not sure about that. Man, there's like radar traps everywhere on the highway.
Is that just out of Toowoomba heading to Brizzy?
Yeah, there's like literally one behind every tree. It's bad time to rob. Good time to rob a bank. All the coppers are out. Man, bloody speed cameras.
So for context, you've been where, with whom, doing what, and what did you get?
Okay, so I've just driven back from about an hour south of Bathurst. So only about less than 100 k's out of Goulburn. And I was there with Joe, who we just met at the Toowoomba show, and Gemma, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. And we went on a hunting trip, so I headed down there Thursday, met the guys at Bathurst on Friday, and we hunted Friday, Saturday, Sunday on a private block. And yesterday afternoon, pivoted to Pennsylvania State Forest, which is one of the really big, popular state forests, because it's only technically 3 hours out of Sydney. It's not, Sydney's a big place, but for a lot of people, it's probably the closest state forest. You see it a lot in videos. It's that pine one where they're driving through all the pines. It looks like that kind of state forest. And so we were there yesterday afternoon and this morning, and left there this morning, and literally just got here now. And
are you going to tell us about how it went? Or are you going to say that?
Yeah, okay. So
just the highlights. We'd love to hear how Jim.
The first prop, I have never seen so many gates in my life. And it's just...
The man from the Pilliga says that.
The Pilliga's nothing, mate. There was a place outside Mudgee, there's a dam or a lake, I can't even think what it's called. And I kid you not, there must have been 1,000 gates on these two hills. They're just like, I was just going, is that like stock or... No? And then this property is just like, there's a goat there, there's a goat there, there's a goat there, there's a goat there, there's a goat. So the first day we were there on a Friday afternoon, all I did with Gemma is actually just took her down this hill until we started hearing goats and said, let's just move out. And we just watched them for about half an hour when we were talking about their behaviour. And then we moved to another part, and all of a sudden I heard bleeding behind us, and I said, oh, they're going to walk on top of us. And she said, are they going to like get angry with us? And I said, nah. And sure enough, they're in bow range. So we spent a lot of time just looking and stuff, and then on Saturday we took Gemma out, and she landed a couple of good 100+ metre shots on goats on a cliff, which we got spectacular footage of. Then we got two adventurous for our filming, so we were running 2 shooters and 3 cameras on this mob of goats, and it just went wrong. The first shot just went out the window, so I ended up doing all these running shots on goats, so we dropped all and got those, and then on Sunday Joe wanted a goat for what he does on video, actual hunt. So we watched these goats come down from 500 metres to 50 metres and then popped one. And so I did that. And then we went to Pennsylvania. It was stinking hot.
Yeah, we heard it was a heat wave.
Yeah, it was. Well, we got a big mountain storm on Saturday night. We only got a little bit of it. We got a bit of hail and stuff like that. Tents all held up. So we were all just hanging out in the cars. And then so we did Pennsylvania, and we were first time I've already been introduced to blackberry that heavy too. You know, they always talk about berry pickers.
Yeah.
And I see why. There's berries everywhere. And on the way back to camp, you know, just puddling along in the last light, 2 fallow popped up, 2 little spikers, chocolate one and a vanilla one. And I said, Jen, come here, get this one. She said, no, I'm not ready. So she said, you do it. So
Which one did you take?
chocolate went behind a bramble, so silly one didn't. So
Silly one got it.
that's it.
Yeah.
And got a little really healthy looking, very light coloured knobby on one side and a little tiny bit of stick on the other side. So, you know, just out of the egg bucks, which was pretty spectacular considering, you know, that a lot of people talk about they never see deer. She ended up seeing deer within a few hours. And more interestingly, I didn't realise that she'd never really been hunting like that ever.
No, we were just talking about this before you came on.
Yeah.
Maybe it was her first hunt, but the first major hunt anyway was the moose overseas. So this is the first state for us.
So she'd been shooting before.
What an introduction.
But never really been hunting, so it was actually pretty. She actually got to do some really stuff that a lot of people don't get to do, like, you know, actually watch the animals come to you and all that stuff. So yeah,
well
and
done. Sounds like a great trip.
And then we drove. This morning we went out for an hour. The wind was wrong. There was activity. There was trucks moving around everywhere. We said, I reckon this has all come to an end, eh? And so she headed back. So I said, go on. So we drove home, and here I am.
1,100
And we
k's
got
later.
to use a thermal. We got to use a thermal this morning.
Oh, we'll hold that thermals. We might talk about thermals a bit later.
It leads in.
Yeah, we'll call that a segue in about 10, 15 minutes.
Sure. Segue away.
So before we introduce Ben more formally, there's a couple more things that are going on. So we've got, I don't think I mentioned it too much in the last podcast, so I'll do it now. We've got our Hunters Campfire Hunters Camp coming up in Nundle in April. So that's, I'm going to say it's pretty much booked out. There are 4 parks that surround Nundle: Hanging Rock, Tuggelow, Newandok. That's how you say it. There's about 50 spots, I'd say, 50-odd spots all up, and we've got around 30 hunters coming, and with people being able to book multiple parks at a time or 2 parks at a time, I'd say the majority of the people that are going to be in the park at that point in time are going to be with us, which is going to be fantastic. So an excellent opportunity for people to come down. If you haven't booked or you wanted to come on the trip but you haven't managed to secure a spot, get in touch with us. We might be able to convince someone to pass up a spot. So that's the way it works. And in the mail today, I mentioned this on our
There it is.
social. That's the receipt, just so you know it's real. The Predator 2021 8x42 Bino giveaway. So that's one of the giveaways that's coming. We'll talk about more in the coming weeks. There's other things that are going on, but those ones are up for grabs. I'm not going to tell you how you're going to win them. Suffice to say, you've got to be in camp for part of the week, and you'll go in the draw. How you get in the draw, beyond that, I'll figure it out as I go. It'll be completely unfair, and hopefully I'll win. That's about where I'm going with those. Or I might just use them for the week and then hand them off secondhand. I haven't figured it out yet. We make these rules up, so it's really fun. So that's good. The other thing that happened today, well, it didn't happen today, it happened a little while ago, but I've only just opened it, was the latest Australian Deer Mag hit us a little while ago, and in it is a 6-page spread of our North Territory
There's
hunt.
a half-naked Brian Boyle as well.
There is.
Look at that.
Is there?
A bruised up Brian Boyle after shooting about 1,000 rounds. There's a good photo of Mark and his buffalo.
Wow.
6-page
It's a
spread.
good article,
it was,
actually.
it was. It's well written. It pulls the piss out of us a little bit, which is okay. Apparently, we brought too many toys with us. Technical toys, that is.
Too many gadgets. Yeah.
Too many gadgets. Just go with it. Martin Fan, thank you. Well done. Anyway, 6 pages. Have a look. It's worth a read. It's actually pretty funny. So that was good to see that come to life in a magazine some 6 months after the fact. Jono, what else is going on?
Not much for me. I have been enjoying that article as well. I've got my magazine. I am starting to try and make some plans for the Raw. I've missed out. I haven't been able to get a spot on Hunter's Camp, but I might still try. We'll see.
If you know someone who can help you out.
Yeah, I'll have to have a few conversations, mate. But
Bring
yeah,
your camera, you'll be right.
Still trying to rescue my the Red Deer Raw. Still chances I might get on it, but if not, I'll probably pop into camp for a few days. And if I have to be the camp cook, I've been called worse before, so in camp. So we'll see how we go.
Good stuff. All right, Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Some may know you as the corporate redneck.
Yep.
This is your handle on Instagram. Thought that was a good one. That was a throwback to your previous work life.
For me.
Oh, that's good. Have you got Red Deer Fallow Rut action plans in the making, or is the new dad? Oh,
yeah, so I've got a baby
dad.
due in July, so I've got to try and squeeze in as much hunting as I can between now and then. So
wait till he stands up.
So there's cameras out at the moment on the local fallow. There's probably a few Sambar hunts in the works, and there'll be a trip to SA to go and dong some reds with any luck. So that's the plan.
Oh, lovely. Very nice.
Oh, so you're still very active, running around in the hunting world. Good. So let's get into a bit about Ben. We'll talk about some of the things that you've done over your time in the hunting world, and we'll get into one of the main reasons that you're here that we alluded to earlier, and that's to help us understand a bit more about thermals, what's on the market as part of one of your other day jobs or night jobs or second roles.
So a little bit about me. I've been hunting for probably the best part of the last 20 years. I'm probably from the new generation of hunters as opposed to the earlier generation where I didn't have dad or granddad or uncle to show me the ropes. I got interested through social media and other things, and went to the local gun shops and said, "Oh, how do I get my license? And what are guns worth? And how do I get my license? I need to do a safety course. Okay, how do I do a safety course? Go to the police station. Go to the police station. They say, I'll go to the gun shop." And didn't really have anyone in my circle at that stage to help me navigate any of that. So it was a little bit hard. So it was always one of those things that got put on the back burner. And luck have it, I moved house and got chatting to my new neighbour, and he mentioned that he was into guns. I said, "Oh, look, I really wouldn't mind getting into some shooting." So he took me under my wing and said, "All right, well, what sort of shooting do you want to do?" And I really had no idea. So he was lucky enough to take me out and, show me some pistols and show me some rifles and ended up with a 223 and a Leopold 4-12 as the first rifle. I guess there's a lot of blokes do. Really the only access I had at that stage, because I didn't understand public land and what you couldn't do and all those kind of things. So the only access I had was through him, and that was, a bit of target shooting and maybe getting out on a few foxes and a bit of whistling and that kind of stuff. And got addicted to it pretty quickly. I'm one of those guys that's got a bit of an addictive personality. So once I sink my teeth into something, I want to know everything about it and work to understand it. And I was working at the time with one of the larger telecommunications companies in Australia. I won't take too many guesses to guess which one it is, but I found that it was just something that I wanted to talk about all the time with different people. And there were ways you could have conversations with people, and this was in Western Victoria, so there was ways you could sort of identify people and if they were safe to have those conversations with, and they're saying, "Hey, what are you up to on the weekend?" "Oh, I went out and did some shooting." And I got chatting with an older pommy bloke one day, Steve, and he said, "Oh, shooting. Yes, I love shooting. Do you want to come out with me?" I said, "Mate, I'd really love that. That'd be great." He said, "All right, no worries. Look, here's my number. I'll ring you and we'll set it up." And he gave me a call and said, "Look, I'm going to go out. You need to meet me here at 6 a.m. We're going to go out chasing foxes." I said, "Oh, great, no worries." So chucked the Tika in the bag and drove out there and met this guy out in the paddock just on sunrise. Anyway, get out there and he's unloading the dogs and he pulls out his shotgun and I pull out this Tika that had this raft of all these accessories and, thinking I was pretty tactical. And he goes, what the hell's that? And I said, well, it's my rifle. And he goes, no, that's no good. Okay, put that back in your bag. Hands me a Beretta shotgun. And I've never had anything to do with a shotgun before, so I had a bit of a quick familiar on that. And that was my first introduction to shooting foxes over dogs, which became probably a 10, 15-year passion with those guys. We went on to started off Steve and I, and then I introduced a couple of mates in, and then a couple of other Steve's mates joined in, and we were doing that for many, many years all around Western Victoria. The guys are still going now. And that was a massive addiction and a big start of it. And then spotlighting. So moving on, natural progression as you sort of get to know more blokes through shooting over hounds. A few of the guys go, hey, we're going out spotlighting tonight. Do you want to go do that as well? Yeah, absolutely. So often spotlighting. And then that was, might have been on a Friday, Saturday night. Then all of a sudden it was every second or third night. Then it was every second night. Then it was, pretty much every night. And it was that way for a lot of years. So pretty fortunate to have people like that who really didn't know me that well, saw that I was keen to learn and give me those opportunities to get out. Otherwise, really, I may never have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing to catch up with a neighbour like that.
Yeah,
it's an absolute fluke.
Yeah.
Hey, what dogs did they use? Was it a mixture, or is there a specific dogs
it's a
they
mixture
used
of
for
dogs. So no, look, we used a lot of fox terriers, a lot of Jack Russells, and really we sort of invited the majority of stuff along. We ended up having different crews where there might have been 10 guys, and that might have meant that there was 2 running dogs high up on the hill. There was a couple of the smaller dogs down pushing in the heavy cover. There was a couple of other dogs, in the back of the vehicles in case they ended up in dens or rock piles. So it was a pretty vast mixture. We had Weimaraners, we had there was even a Bichon Frise that came out every now and then to join the rest of them and wander around, which was always good for a laugh. So
unreal. That'd be a heap of fun.
Yeah, no, it was. It was really good. A lot of fun and good camaraderie with good guys. So they still hunt now. They do, even some contract stuff for some of the larger chicken farms and stuff now, where they've got pretty exclusive access, heavily controlled, but pretty exclusive access to get on and help those guys deal with a lot of their problems as well.
Mm. Nice. And then you moved into deer at some point?
Yeah, so what happened there was we worked out through family connection with one of our mates that he had a family member in South Australia who had 3,000-4,000 acres over there that we could go over there and spotlight. So we used to head over there and run amok and, and basically just shoot the entire time. We'd sleep all day and hunt all night and clean up all the foxes. And it was during the day one day, we might have been in during some of the warmer months, we were like, well, what are we going to do? It's middle of the day. We had a bit of a whistle, not having much luck. Oh, he's got, a couple of 1,000 acres worth of bush there. Let's, just wander through and see if we can maybe push some foxes out onto some of the tracks that wander through, and we'll do a bit of a driven hunt by ourselves. And we didn't have any luck, but like most of the stuff in SA, the ground there is very sandy, so started noticing all these tracks. And I said to Dave, I reckon this is deer. I reckon there's deer here. So I said to the property owner, he goes, oh yeah, look, we have seen deer, but I don't think there's very many there. And I said, well, do you mind if we shoot one, if we see one? He goes, no, it's all right. Just if you knock one over, just drop a leg off at the farmhouse and, you guys can take the rest or whatever. Okay, that's pretty good. So we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. No idea really how to track them or understand any of the movements, what sort of deer there were or anything like that. So we sort of used that opportunity, I guess, in the next couple of years of heading up there to actually work out, okay, well, they're fallow deer and they tend to hang out in these areas and, okay, these are the times of year. I mean, we literally knew nothing. We didn't know anything about the stages of antler growth. We didn't know anything about the rut. We didn't know how to break down a deer and skin it and do anything like that. So we taught ourselves over the next few years how to do all that stuff with the help of, YouTube videos and articles from magazines and all of that kind of stuff. And that, that really became my passion from there. And, over the years, I sort of gravitated towards Sambar because somehow Fallow turned out to be the easy deer. So we wanted to try and find out, well, where does this go from here? So about 7 years ago, I started chasing Sambar, and I've been a hopeless Sambar hunter ever since.
7 years chasing Sambar. We were talking about this while we were waiting for Mark to come in, having just interviewed Zeb last week about Sambar hunting and all of the things that it took for him to become a Sambar hunter, and then all the tricks and tips and things that he now knows and how easy it is for him to find them. It's still amazing that, I've been down there 3 times chasing Sambar, and I can say I've seen them. I've been relatively close to them, but they've never given me the opportunity to shoot, which is probably wise of them. You're saying 7 years, still chasing them, still
chasing them, mate. Yeah. I've seen them. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I understand Fallow, and I think I can find them pretty easily. Sambar seem to constantly change their minds in terms of where they want to be, and that's usually where I am. Is where they're not. So, but near Ballarat, there's fairly limited options within close proximity there to hunt Sambar. You really need to get up into the high country regions to do it, but there is a couple of spots you can get out there and do it. And I remember one of the state forests there, I was chomping around and, I'd found prints and I'd found where there were rubs and, so I started to narrow down a bit of a field of where I thought these deer were, and it was one particular stag I was chasing. I ended up buying a heap of trail cams and having him out there, and then understanding at particular times of the year that he was roughly on a 3-day cycle from coming back and visiting this wallow and then heading off again, and then trying to work out, well, from there, where is he going? Like all of the, the elements of life. There's food, there's water, there's shelter. But where and why is he going to and from here? I reckon I hunted that deer probably over 100 times, visited those same spots and wandered around those same areas because I was just addicted. I just wanted to know more. And it was, within an hour and a half of home, so it was an easy place to go. So I kept chasing this guy. And so one morning I'm out there and I said, all right, I'm just going to go out, check the cameras, see if he's been around. And I was within about 10 metres of the camera, and he stood up probably 5 or 6 metres away from me in his bed, and he really sort of hopped up and he just sort of stood there and trotted off about maybe 10 or 15 metres up the side of a hill and presented this perfect sort of broadside shot. And he was staring back at me and gave me the almighty honk, and I sort of lifted the rifle and I put it on him and I just said, click. And off he ran and off he went. And I don't know, I just figured he'd beaten me 100 times. So, maybe he deserved to have that one as a bit of a gimme. And mind you, I never saw him again after that. So
you're a generous man. Right. I would have said more than fucking click, I can tell you.
Wouldn't have been the worst spoken for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was but it was a good experience. And I mean, look, I still get out and chasing now. I'm like everyone else. I'm time poor. There's times that you need to get out and just do a lot of scouting to understand the areas that you're in. There's times that you need to get out once you've scouted those areas and hunt them. There's times where you need to get out and get cameras out so you can, let that do some of that scouting work for you. And, I still do a lot of that stuff, but having a young family and particularly with another bubble in the way, and a busy work life and that kind of thing as well. It's difficult to get away as much as I like, but in my heart and my soul, I'm out there in my head all the time. So hunting is something that people want to talk about how they identify. Well, I identify as a hunter, and it's something I'm very passionate about.
Well said.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
A lot of us
That's
will agree
my
with that.
pronoun.
Yeah, exactly right.
Hunter.
Yes.
That's. We'll leave that alone, Mark.
My pronoun?
I'm not going near it. Very good. All right, no, that's cool. I'm wondering whether people that live in the heartlands of Sambar, we were talking to, like I said, we were talking to Zeb before, and he finds it easier now that he's been around them for so long to find them. I know Mark doesn't find it too difficult to go up and find reds these days. Maybe you've got a captive audience, Mark, where they are. They're certainly not behind wire, but you've understood their habits, right? And you sort of know when and where to find them these days. And fallow are no different. If you're used to hunting them like that, they become the easy deer. But maybe, for me, I can say I've let quite a few of those walk, but probably not a fallow buck that I've chased 100 times. It's not going to get that lack of attention from me.
It made sense at the time.
I've seen you get a bit addictive to a buck at Nundle there, yeah? When you seen that big one. You won't let him go.
Yeah. No, I won't be letting him go this year either. All good.
Hey, it's also too, it's a very personal thing. And it's also where what kind of hunting you do. I thought I am having this conversation today, over the weekend. If you've always hunted a state forest, then you're kind of used to a certain type of hunting, which is basically opportunistic. You can set out cameras, you can stake out a space, but there might be 5 other blokes who's also staked out that space, and you might think, oh, well, I'll let that one go for next year, and then 20 minutes later you hear the shot, someone drops it in its tracks, And that's one of the problems with Brisbane Valley Reds, I know if I see a good red stag, there's every chance I won't see him again. And unfortunately, he might get spotlighted from the road.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dilemma that you get into. So you think, okay, I'll let it go, but that doesn't mean it's going to be let go by anyone.
No, there's a very even red deer in Velvet, which probably is up on my Insta actually from trail cam a few years ago, and that's exactly what happened. We sort of let him go and thought we'd wait till he'd come out of Velvet and knock him over then, and then we heard from the locals that a couple of nights later he got spotlighted from the road, and they jumped the fence and chainsawed him, and off they went.
So got the head off.
I passed up the only double six I've ever passed up was up in Mary Valley, and the reason I passed up was it split during the roar, so it split the right hand antler. So technically at the time it's a 4-6, and I said, oh well, it'll grow back. It's gone.
Never see him again.
Never to be seen again.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what appeals to me about Victoria and the high country is it's so big and there's so much of it, the country up there. I mean, yes, there's a lot of hunters as well, but, the bolder you are, the more private it's going to be and the less chance that people are going to do that. You can get way back in those places. Whereas, most, and I guess you could say the same for parks like Nundle. Nundle's pretty massive. You can get some pretty deep, dark, gnarly places in that system. And, there's not going to be too many other people that are getting down there. So there's a good chance if you're doing that, you're going to be able to chase them for, a couple of years. I know people that have chased the same buck for a couple of years down there. But most of the parks are smaller than that, aren't they? So,
and plus, of course, load's the big thing. I mean, I was reading a really interesting article about they were trying to, basically the premise was, does recreational hunting, is it a benefit to animal management or not? And this guy quite honestly said, we don't know because we haven't tried to study it. So we can say yes and we can say no, but we haven't tried to study it. He said one of the troubles with studying recreational hunters as a group is that because they're recreational, they gravitate to the best outcome for the recreation. So, if you looked at it statistically, Nundle is full of deer because there's lots of deer that get shot there. But a park that doesn't get shot has no deer because there's no deer getting shot there.
You mean they're not being recorded?
That's right. So they go, there's no deer there because there's no records. All the deer here because all records. And the trouble is when you tell everyone that there's deer being shot here, more hunters
everyone goes
there. So because, it's recreational. You get paid for it. You want to try and if you're going to spend, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear, you want to try and get at least some bang for your buck. So you go where the deer are. So you get this really big imbalance of, you get really big imbalances of populations. And there can be places like, and we don't know, there's quite possibly private land around Hundle that got moose running around.
All the national park.
That's
all
right.
the national park that borders it that no one hunts for.
That's
No
right.
one should hunt.
Because you can't hunt there, so we don't know what's in there. So those big bucks that everyone are looking for, they might just be over there, and that's one of the troubles with the recreational market. We actually want to, since we do it recreationally, we want to have some, we want to have success because that's part of the recreation. So we go to where the deer are.
It's a good point. While we're on the subject of deer, Ben, do you have an opinion on the National Feral Deer Management Strategy that's out? Are you giving it any thought?
Look, I have, and I've started writing my own submission back to him. I think we've got until about the 20th of March to get those submissions in. Do I agree something needs to be done and something needs to change? Yeah, look, sure. There's more deer around than ever before, and I think I was saying to a couple of you guys before, I would challenge anyone to walk into any patch of bush now in Victoria at least. Absolutely 100% there's at least fallow there. There's sambar where I've never seen sambar before. There's reds where I've never seen red before. There's a lot more people having accidents, vehicle accidents and that kind of stuff with deer in semi-urban areas. There's very American-style signage going up on roads over towards Mount Dandenong in terms of, they're not kangaroo signs anymore, they're deer signs. So there's absolutely more deer out there than there's ever been. Does something need to be done? Yeah, potentially, but maybe what needs to be done is we need to stop protecting, and creating these zones where they can breed up without having any natural predators or without having hunters being able to access them. Like you guys pointed out in the potty that you did on this in terms of SA is the peak body that's driving this. SA is a state that doesn't recognise hunting, doesn't recognise deer as game. They recognise them as pests. So they're not measuring things like, the health benefits, the economic benefits, the revenues from licensing and those kind of things like states like New South Wales and Victoria are. So I think, yes, do I think something needs to be done and something needs to change? Yes. Do I think that they have the recipe for that right? No, I don't think so. I know there's some stuff in there about, recreational hunting, but they really made a very early on point of that in that it's not about recreational hunting for them. It's about these other programs that they want to introduce. And it's those other programs that are ultimately going to force us out of areas and force us out of our hobbies of being able to do these things, and increase risks to us which otherwise aren't there. There's some stats around in terms of, like Victorian national parks. Something like 95% of the visitors to Victorian national parks visit 5% of the areas. So they gravitate, they want to go and see the waterfalls, and they want to go and see this feature, or they want to go and see this lookout. So there's all this vast area of space that those people aren't going to. So why can't we look at an R license type system or even, potentially an American balloted type of system to actually give hunters access to those areas? And everyone I speak to in my circles, they'd be happy to pay and financially contribute for that privilege to be able to do that and to get into these, exclusive areas and take on these animals and fill their freezers at no cost to the taxpayer and actually add value back into
cost benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. But
I'd be willing to pay. I'd be willing to pay for a tag in any of those scenarios to build a wealth around, and the value of the game species up. Even if it's $5 or $10, to buy a tag whatever the number is, it doesn't really matter. It's going to
Well,
prove
it doesn't,
economic
but
value.
I think it can go even further than that. I think some people you talk to, they'd be happy to pay hundreds and even thousands of dollars to get access to some of these areas for a period of time to actually get in there and, potentially hunt beasts that have never been hunted, and get access to some of those amazing heads that are otherwise not going to be seen because they're just taken out by choppers, and all these other things that go on. So,
what's and I've thought about it a lot. What's really weird about that whole document is that if you break it down to first principles, they're saying we need to kill deer because we're not talking about housing them or rehoming them or adopting them. We're saying we need to kill deer. Okay, that's what it's about. It's about killing deer. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So there's this group of people who kill more deer than anyone else. Okay? But because we reckon they don't kill them for the right reason, we're going to exclude those people. Now, there is nowhere you would apply that logic to anything else ever. If you say, look, we want to achieve this thing, and over here is this a group of people who are doing exactly what we would achieve it to do. In fact, they do it better, more often, and with more success than anyone else. However, they wear green T-shirts, and we just don't like green T-shirts. So, sorry, you put your numbers over there and continue on. And it's just bizarre. The more I think about it, it's strange. 120,000 deer get killed by 60,000 licensed people in Victoria. Yeah, but because they like to kill them because they've got a reason that doesn't align with our reasons. Yeah. It's like what those deer get back up and they keep moving again. Are they like zombie deer?
They're like fish that you throw back when you're done.
Are we thrown? I've got one of them throw it back.
It's a bit like too, like if you had let's just spit it another way. If you had a cow infestation problem and you had cows running through the hills and there were just that many of them that they're really starting to become an issue. So you said to the public, okay, guys, there's free meat roaming around up in the hills because there's all these cows. Tell you what we'll do. We're going to give you access to go up there and take as many cows as you like, take them home and process them and put them in your freezer. Absolutely, you'd do that. But that's exactly what we're dealing with. It's just not cows, they're deer.
Well, but unfortunately, in this situation, we're going, because you want to eat that cow. Now, we don't like the fact that you want to eat that cow. That's the wrong reason. So, you can't participate in this.
Doesn't use as much plastic.
Because you're not using the right. It's just, I mean, the more I think about it, you want deer dead. This guy's killing deer. Maybe you should talk to this guy.
Well, not only that, Mark, we've talked about this before. That guy's paying to kill them
that's right.
Whereas every other option you've got's going to cost the taxpayer money.
And that's the interesting one of the things. I mean, there's some stats coming out very easily available that at least $200 million a year goes into Victorian coffers from deer. It'd be interesting to know how much the deer are costing the Victorian.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's more than $200 million a year. So,
I would expect so.
Well, the interesting thing about things like the national deer strategies, I mean, they're doing things in there. They're recommending for professionals and recreational hunters things like the use of thermal and night vision and other technologies and that kind of stuff as well. Which is there's a positive there, from a couple of different aspects, but they're agreeing that it is an effective management tool for further reducing the number of deers. New South Wales have recognised it and said, okay, well, we're actually going to allow the use of thermal technology for, on deer between the hours of sunrise to sunset. But then completely on the other hand, you've got Victoria turning around and going, no, well, it's completely banned and it's illegal. And if you do that, we charge. So why are we not allowed to use a tool that's actually going to make it more efficient and allow us to harvest more deer in a shorter period of time? Similar with the use of suppressors and those kind of things as well. These are all effective and efficient tools.
My immediate answer to that is that New South Wales treat them as ferals and there's still game in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, it
Yeah.
you know,
talks
fair
about
chase rules around game, less around ferals, right? But I get your point.
it talks about auto loaders, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, which is quite, you know, which is almost against various state policy. You know, it's suggesting things that are almost that are in certain interpretations against policy. So, you know, as I said, you know, auto loaders, thermals, and suppressors. Yeah. And I mean, in a state forest situation, especially since New South Wales, it really, you know, they've suspended the game status, as it were, of deer, so there isn't really seasons now. And your idea is you are supposed to take them. You would have thought that you're right. Why not make it easier?
Yep.
Auto loaders are bad.
They are. They're very bad.
Well, suppressors are good for your ears.
Well,
Well, that's right. I mean,
Workplace health and
suppressors
safety.
in other places around the world, suppressors are actually required by law to be used.
that's the dumbest thing. I understand people's arguments around auto loaders. Do I agree with them? It doesn't matter. I don't want one, but plenty of other people do. Suppressors, though, that one just doesn't make any sense at all. It's on so many levels. I mean, it doesn't make them little quiet ninja rifles.
They're not silencers.
No,
Yeah.
Like in the movies where it's like you can't hear it. It produces the volume.
Auto loaders, you know, auto loaders aren't AR platforms. An AR is an auto loader, but an auto loader is an AR. There is plenty of sporting rifles around the world, some very, very nice sporting rifles with lovely, you know, Turkish walnut stocks that are just auto loading. So they're 3 to 5 shots auto loaders. It's not, and I think that's where, you know, what is it? It's the over politicization of all this comes into play. Things like suppressors and auto loaders and so on like that. It's really the politicization rather than the sense behind it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Agreed.
So Ben, since you've raised the topic of thermals, well done, by the way. Let's talk about Ground Force International for a second. Another part of your life outside of your day job.
Yeah, sure. So,
you want to introduce that for us and what that's all about?
yeah, so Wind Black the Clock a few years ago, I left the corporate world after a few years, and I actually went and worked in one of the local gun dealers for a while, just to help him develop some new business processes and, you know, things like getting his stock inventoried and start looking at getting a website online and some of those sort of basic technological challenges. And from there, I obviously met a few of the distributors around, and I ended up meeting James from Ground Force and went on to become a rep for his company. So this is going back quite a few years ago now, when night vision very first came into the consumer market. So that was a lot of fun, getting to know and understand that stuff. And what followed after that was thermal getting introduced to the consumer market. A few years after that, I left, having a young family, just being on the road. I was managing at that time. I was looking after New South Wales, Victoria, Tassie, SA, and WA. So I was on the road pretty well permanently. So I went back to doing a day job, but recently got invited back to be part of the company, just helping work with their marketing. So in terms of social media and engagement, and just really just getting our products out there in front of people, and also trying to help people make the right buying decisions. And so there's a couple of different levels with that. There's obviously working with the dealers and educating the dealers and educating the staff and those kind of things. But there's also educating the market and educating the punters that are out there who are thinking that, you know, maybe something like this might actually add some value to their hunting kit. And then helping them understand and take them on the journey of, well, how do I understand this stuff? Because the reality is that it's got more of a relationship with your smartphone than it does, you know, with your Leopold scope. We're getting into electronics and cameras and very sensitive equipment. So, yeah, so that's what I'm doing now, and working with people and just trying to get as much product as we can out there to people to experience and play with, just to make them informed buyers so that they, when they do decide to pick up something for themselves, they're picking the right gear.
And they've got Ground Force has quite a few brands that you represent outside of
so we run
thermals
a few
as well.
different brands. Yeah, that's right. So we a few different brands outside of thermals. So we're probably one of the smaller distributors. Our particular focus is in and around night vision and thermal, but we also do, accessories to the market as well. So some shooting sticks, some hearing protection, some security stuff, so safes as well as travel cases, and new products coming in and around all the time. There's a new range of flashlights and some other stuff coming out at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming in the role that you've played with most of these toys somewhere along the way.
Yeah, that's probably one of the good benefits, I guess, we having a relationship with a company like this is you do get to experience, a lot of the stuff as it comes through. So, the new products before they hit the market, and then also, to spend a bit of time with the products longer term and stuff that actually integrates well with the hunting that I do. Particularly with the fox shooting and spotlighting and that kind of stuff.
So, what kind of? I've got a fairly reasonable idea of thermals, but you were talking about some of the smartphone stuff. What's that?
Oh, I just mean in terms of like the devices themselves. They're not like, even though it's a thermal scope, it's a computer. So it really doesn't have much of a relationship with a metal tube and a few bits of glass.
Okay.
As well.
The components of it, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, and also from a usability perspective too, like we've had a lot of people that have been, very interested and like to get into it, but they simply, if you can't drive a basic mobile phone or a smartphone, then maybe a thermal's not for you. Or at least get someone to spend the time with you so that you can actually navigate those things. Because if you buy it, it can be the greatest thing in the world, but if you can't use it or drive it, or if you don't understand it, you're going to have a bad experience. And that's a lot of money down the drain. It's not a good representation of the company that you bought it off, or, or the dealer that you bought it off, that kind of stuff as well.
So with in the thermal range, we're talking about the handhelds and the scope mounts.
Yeah, so you got a couple of different classifications of devices in the basic sense. You've got your monoculars or your spotters, which is like it's either a handheld type device for using for scanning a field, that kind of stuff. Some of them now allow you to mount them up on a fixed mount, so be that on the outside of your vehicle, so on a spotlight mount or up on the roof. You can then through... And
then what? So once that's mounted, what that presents back to a screen?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can either drive that back to via Wi-Fi to a screen or a tablet mounted in the vehicle, or suction cap to the windscreen of your car, or you might have the ability to plug AV into the back of your large screen in your four-wheel drive, so you could utilise that kind of tech as well and actually have that running on the screen. Like most things with technology, where you can go hardwired versus wireless, you're going to be better off. You get less lag through the technology. You're not having to worry about the wireless transmission come through the roof of your car or all of the other items that might be in the way. So if you can hardwire it, you're going to get a better experience. And they've even got dedicated models now which are got like a magnetic base, and they sit up on the roof of your vehicle, and you can actually turn a knob or a joystick to actually move the unit around rather than using a handle, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty nice being able to sit in a vehicle and have the heater going or the aircon going, and sitting there staring at a screen waiting for things to pop out.
Ian likes the sound of that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about sticking one on the roof of my office here to point out into the paddock, so I know when.
In the paddock, just see what's wandering around. Yeah.
Let's just see what's wandering around. Yeah, see when old Mr. Fox comes to look for the chickens, or the lambs.
So you got your binoculars or your spotters, and you've then got like your scopes and your optics, and you've got a few different types in that space as well. Most modern ones now that are getting around tend to be what they call like a tube type. So it looks like a scope. It's got all of the physical characteristics of a traditional optic. It'll mount in traditional rings. Which means you can buy a large amount of quick detachable bases with a good option of, return to zero type stuff if you're using it on multiple platforms. You've got the option of, very lightweight optics in that space as well. I think some of them now are down to about 480 grams. So again, they're not prohibitive in terms of size or weight, or those kind of things. And then you've got clip-on technology. So that's a device that attaches to a traditional optic and allows it to then see with, in thermal through that optic as well. So they're your rough different types or classifications, and they've all got their place. And they've all got their, inherent downfalls, I suppose as well. Like anything, it's about finding the right tool for the right job.
And I noticed on the website a product called Infiray?
Infiray, which is a brand, yep, manufacturer.
Yeah, which was a really tiny little device that goes on the back of your mobile.
Yep, so they've got tiny little ones like that, which you can actually plug in, and it allows your mobile to have thermal as well. The restrictions when you start talking about thermal, and this is where it gets really important to understand what it is you're actually wanting to achieve with that. So if you went and bought that with the expectation of seeing a fox at 300 metres, you're probably going to be disappointed. Well, I know you're going to be disappointed because it's relative to the type of technology that's in that thermal device, and no two thermal devices are the same. And where it becomes a challenge for the punters wanting to buy this stuff, they say, oh, thermal, this is great. And there's been a few of them that have come out over the years where people have gone, oh, this is great thermal, and it's really cheap, and it's a price that I can afford. And they've purchased it, and it just hasn't delivered on the results. And what that does is that just goes, oh, that thermal's, it's just rubbish. It's no good. I used one, and it was no good. But it just wasn't the right device for the right purpose. So there's, 3 or 4 things in every thermal that really will change the experience in terms of what it is you're looking for. So in no particular order, your lens size. So the lenses that they use on them. So the bigger the lens size that you got, the more heat or infrared light can hit that lens to get translated back into a picture. So typically that lens size will translate back to distance. So when you look at some of these optics on paper now, it's pretty impressive when they start giving you figures of, detection at 3,650 metres. That's because they've got particularly those very large lenses on them. Where some of that stuff becomes, like, it's good certainly to have that and to have those huge distances to be able to see those things, but at 3,650 metres, you're talking about detection distance. So it's a blip on the radar. You've got no way of determining whether that's a 30-inch stag, a rabbit, a hare, a fence post that's been warmed up in the sun, a rock on the side of a hill. It really just is the smallest little blip on the side of on the actual screen. Where you start to get translation of that in terms of the clarity of the image, you start talking about the sensor. So we've got the lens. Lens gives us our distance. The sensor is what's giving us our clarity, because it's what's translating it back into an image. So it's in pixels. I don't know. Think about the higher quality TV that you have. The more amount of pixels you have, the better quality of the image. So this is talking about the number of pixels that it's pulling together to create and form an image. And most mid-range stuff now will be around you'll see it as a 384 by 288 sensor, which is the amount of pixels that are in that sensor, and the higher quality stuff at 640. So twice that quality again. There's been some new stuff hit the market, really only in the last couple of months, getting into 1280 thermal, which is really starting to get up there in terms of the actual sharpness of the image. Very, very cost prohibitive at this point, but the technology is there and it's evolving. And, it's a little bit like, think about the first plasma TV that you bought. and how that, how you can now walk into, JB or your local retailer and what you can buy a good quality LED, TV for now. That technology, as it moves on, things get better, and then you get that N-1, those items drop off and get cheaper over time. So we've got our lens size, and then we've got our sensor. You start to get into other things like what they call like the Hertz rating. So this is how many times it's actually refreshing that picture back to your eye when you're looking. Now, it doesn't matter so much, in a static shooting position, because hopefully the target that you're aiming at's not moving very much. But if you're thinking about standing out in an open paddock and doing this, you want something that's refreshing that image a lot of times back to your eye. And if it's less than, say, 30 hertz, you're really going to get that chunky sort of view. You're going to have to find you've really got to slow down because the image just isn't keeping up with the scrolling that you're doing along the way. And that's probably more so important in a spotter, whether that's being used from a handheld or whether that's being used on a mount or another system. So with hertz ratings, you really want the biggest rating that you can get there. So, but anything above 30 hertz, because 30 hertz is when our brain starts to recognise, hang on a minute, this is slow and chunky and starting to get a bit blocky. And it's in the example of a scope, if something's moving, you need to know it's moving because you're really poised, ready to take that shot.
Yeah. What's the upper end? What's the upper end of that hertz? If 30 is minimum, what do they go up to?
About 60 in the really higher end stuff. The average is probably is really in that 30 to 50 space. Even in some of the really, really high quality optics, they tend to stick with 30 because again, that's really the limit that our brain is quite conscious of. Anything below that, we can really pick up. Whereas that 30 and above, we're talking about only very minuscule amounts of difference.
Okay.
Net D is the other thing that you'll see around on some of these thermals, and that's basically so it's noise equivalent temperature difference, net D, or sometimes I'll call it thermal contrast. And that's how good that sensor is at being able to measure really small variances in the heat or the radiation. Now, this is where it gets all a bit strange and where it pays for people to learn some of this stuff. Lens, you want as big of a lens as you can. Sensor, you want a bit bigger than the sensor as you can afford. Hertz rating, you want as big as you can, but the net D rating, you want as low as you can. So a good quality net D rating, now on the higher end limits will probably be 17 to 12. Which where that comes into its own is the sharpness of the image you'll get, and also being able to pick up the temperature variance between let's say a rabbit at a significant distance in amongst grass, and being able to pick up that really small item in amongst those other items is a completely different heat signature, and then it can then present that back as a crisp, clear image back to you.
So basically, it sees through the grass.
Yeah,
what you're saying.
Effectively. Yeah. But interesting point on that. We get a lot of queries from people saying, "Hey, I want a thermal that I can find pigs in the lignum, or I want a thermal that I can just put up and I can show me where all the deer are in the bush." Any thermal to be able to translate an image back some part of it has to be visible to that lens. So the line of sight direct to that animal has to be there. If it's completely behind something, you won't get a detection. You won't get a reading. If there's at least a portion of that animal visible, you will at least get a detection. You won't know what it is, but you'll know something's there.
Yeah. Okay. So back to that one that sees all the deer. No, I know that's.
Well, they are doing drones now with thermal. Which I've seen a lot of guys have a bit of success with. That's something I'd be interested to have a play with.
I use my drone for fishing. I'm more than happy to use it for spotting things. And I've used it for spotting deer, but they're too noisy. The deer just run off. And it was funny actually. They in the deer plan that we were talking about earlier, they talked about drones being an effective piece of technology for what a load of shit. They run so fast. As soon as there's a buzz above their head, I can tell you now. But so let's take all of those technical things, right? And there's reasons why some scopes have higher numbers and others have lower numbers, and that's all going to be about, cost of product to market and what's fit for purpose depending on what we're using it for. So the majority of our listeners are hunters, and a lot of them are interested in these new rules that are in New South Wales that allow us to use thermals in New South Wales R licensed parks. But we can only use those thermals 30 minutes either side of sun up and sundown. So there's a really small window for the practical use of thermals. Tell me I'm wrong about that. I don't know enough about thermals. And I said to Mark, and I think I said to Jono, and I'm pretty sure they told me I was an idiot. And I said, no, I'm sure I've used one in the daylight. And I might have been slightly wrong. It might have been like the early dawn time that we used it, and it would have been a super cold morning. So I sort of understand that it works in the cold, but is there technology improvements here that are going to allow these things to be? Yeah.
Technology's improved a lot, and they will work throughout the day. They will struggle where the temperature, so if you've got really high humidity, and you've got really high temperatures, maybe in that, 20, 30 degrees plus mark, you're going to struggle because this is where it comes back to things like the net D ratings. So what we're looking at there is being able to detect the difference between the animal and a tree, or the animal and a piece of bush, or the animal and whatever the rest of that ambient background might be. So thermals will 100% work in the daytime. The challenge there is you get a lot more detections because the branches on the trees will heat up over the course of the day. The rocky outcrops, particularly if you're up in those sort of areas chasing goats and those kind of things, you look up and you're going to have 150 detections. But you can then use that to look at maybe the detections that are moving as opposed to the detections that are static.
Okay, and we're talking about a scenario where we're in, Nundle State Forest in winter. It's early winter, so it's somewhere between 0 degrees and 10 degrees. Yes, it might get a little bit hot on that during the day when we've stopped hunting, we've come in for a bit of a rest. But usually when we're out there, you're pretty well rugged up and it's cold. How effective is this stuff going to be through that cold morning?
Very effective.
Picking this net D rating. Yeah.
Well, if you think about a summer's night out chasing foxes, where these things again can be really quite effective, and you've got cold is better because it allows those things to stand out more. But with some of the new technologies and stuff that are coming through, with better quality sensors and those kind of things, and better be able to detect the variance and changes in those heat signatures coming through, stuff like that's going to, in the type of situations you're talking about, it's going to work just as well during the day as it's going to work at night. So the fact that it's day, night, or otherwise actually has no bearing on it.
Your experiences with that, Mark?
Look,
because I know you've been using it up on your blog.
So I used one 13 hours ago, I think, or 14 hours ago. And it was one of a much later model or generation than the one that I've been using for a while, and which I've used at Nundle. I think that the thing about thermal technology is, and I really I didn't discover it, but I realised this when I first did the reviews on them, is that it's almost hard to explain, but what it does is your eye sees in a certain spectrum, okay? We see things, the way that this is all working right now is because our eyes can pick up certain spectrums of light, and it creates pictures so we can look at pictures on screens and stuff. This thing doesn't do that. This thing looks at a different spectrum, and what it is, it's looking at radiation, or the easiest way to say it looks at heat. Okay? It sees heat. So it sees all heat. And what we don't realise is everything has heat in it, including rocks, fence posts, wire. Everything has heat in it. So when you look through that thermal, you see heat. So you see all heat. Now, if you're like, when I first used one, we were down Murrurundi and we were hunting a farm property and there was a grass slope and it was almost snowing and you lifted it up, it was pitch black and you lifted it up and the whole hill was full of roos and pigs and stuff like that because the thing was, almost snow colour and then there was these big fat blobs of, blood moving around bodies. It jumped out like, it was like a revelation. I'm like, oh, look, there's the pigs there. Look at there's the cows, there's the pigs, there's the deer over there, and we just stunned. When you go to like today, where it was, hot weekend in, rural New South Wales, we were in a pine forest. You picked it up. I saw the ground, I saw the rocks, I saw the pine trees. So being able to just simply see heat doesn't mean like there'll be a blank screen and then there'll be this lovely deer outline in your screen.
Hang on,
there'll be trees.
Marketing pictures told me.
And there'll be deer and stuff. So that's what I think people get.
Yeah.
I think people think it's kind of like, it's what's the name? Science fiction, they pick it up, bring, there it is, target. Doesn't do that. So what I found is that the way I use them and the way I use it up on the block is I get to the block before dawn. It's dark, still pretty warm still at the moment though. And I just scan and I go, okay, what heat signatures around? And generally there's the big blob of cows because it's a cattle property. So I know the cows are over there. And then you might, start picking up birds and trees. So you'll see a bright tree, but there'll be and for some reason I can't explain, you probably have a much better explanation, but a living thing has a slightly different heat signature than, the trees are living, but an animal has a slightly different heat signature than the tree. And the best way I can describe it is it seems to glow a little bit more.
Yep.
Whereas a rock that's just been heated by the sun is this kind of solid mass. A living creature tends to glow. And, of course, then it starts to move, which gives it away. But if it's not moving, you'll see that it kind of glows. And so, I'll scan and see what's out there just so that I basically don't bump anything before I start.
Mm.
But, I mean, that's using it as an observation tool. I don't know how effective it would be in daylight in somewhere like Nundle unless it could be very effective. For instance, when I used it in Nundle, I was looking over a recently cut pine block and the macropods were just everywhere. You could see them. And in fact, there was this rabbit and I almost was able to grab this rabbit because it was pitch black and I could see it. And it was clearly, but I don't know how you'd go looking through it. I don't think you'd be able to drive past the pine forest and kind of go, oh, there he is. There's a 260 Douglas. I go there and bang it.
Right. Now this is going to be because basically the trees block out the.
That's right. So it's not like.
It's got a weave.
It's not like
one of those.
It's not like it's a dark screen, black curtain, and then there's this wonderful
and just
deer
the
outline.
well.
That's right. Everything's got heat in it. You're going to see it.
But if you're looking down the rows,
Down the road.
The road
will be hot.
Not
So
the road, the rows of trees.
Oh,
So instead
rows.
of looking, you're looking
Through
down
the
the
trees.
rows,
Yeah.
through the trees, down the lanes, and if something's
Yeah.
moving across,
You'll
you're
see
going to
it.
pick that stuff up. Yeah.
You will. Yeah,
I'd be
if you-
really interested to try. I think one of the awesome things is that Ben is organising. I think he's organising. We'll see how we go. Working on organising to have a whole bunch of these thermal options available for us in Hunt Camp down at Nundle this year to trial. So we'll be able to report back on some of this and just see how it goes. Sorry, my computer's moving because my dog's tangled up in the power cord and decided to go.
From my
The one thing that
how
I would-
effective
oh,
are they?
sorry.
How effective are they in fog?
It can certainly cut down the amount of image because again, that there's a lot of moisture there. That moisture is lots of little droplets of water, and lots of little droplets of water over a large period of time blocks stuff coming back to it.
Yeah.
Same with humidity. So humidity can really cut it down as well because the same thing. You've got a lot of moisture in the air, and it makes it very difficult for the sensors to actually, for the data to actually get back and hit that lens and change it. I've had good success in fog, but the problem is, in a lot of ways with things like fog, same thing. Okay, you might know that it's there, but it's still not shootable. It might be detectable, or it might be a situation where you can go, hey, there's something there. We need to wait for that fog to lift. But it's no guarantee with any of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Are you finding some brands or products are better than others in this hunting scenario? And I noticed you, like I said, you represent a couple of different brands here. You're leaning towards one or another if you're picking them up for this early morning hunting scenario.
Look, I think anything that's got those really low net D ratings, and if you can get something in a 640 core, to get those better images and again that as big a lens size as you can get, so you can gather as much information as you can. The earlier stuff probably struggled with that a lot more. You find the more modern stuff a little bit better. So yeah.
Another thing too is there's different spectrums that the heat is represented. So there's like white hot, black hot, and then there's lots of
different
proprietary brands. Yeah, a palette, it's a color palette.
Yeah. So what you can do is you can set it to try and contrast as best you can for the kind of thing that you're looking for in the environment that you're in. So I like to use either a white hot or a black hot. So that means the game that I'm looking for, or the potential targets that I'm looking for, will stand out as bright white or black. You've got other ones which lay to run in red or green, and you've got right through to things like rainbow filters, which will change the complete contrast of everything that you look at based on the heat source that was received back from that item. So you can look for small variances in it. Go, well, hang on. This terrain all looks roughly this colour and shade, but I'm starting to see a few of these other darker, hotter colours coming through in this area. Why is that? Is there something there?
Are those colour palettes customizable in these products? Because someone like Ian, who's colourblind, won't be able to see red and things like that.
Well, what generally, John, the models have they have a selection of palettes within them. So like. Yeah. The Burris I'm using, I think it's got 5 pallets, and this one today had possibly 7. And some of those are like, as you would expect, like red, white, black. And then you get into proprietary ones like iron and violet and stuff like that.
So potentially you might have to choose a product based on what you can see.
Yeah, well, most definitely, of course.
Yeah.
But, but also the benefit of that palette is that sometimes I've found that it's just better to scroll through the palettes on what you're looking at. And so sometimes something, it works better if it's white hot. Sometimes it works better if it's black hot, and so on and so forth. And I don't know exactly why, but I find that when I'm like scanning trees, like I'm looking for birds or possums or something like that, just like here at home, they work better in black hot. On the ground, I've found, and this is only through my extensive research, is that on the ground, white seems to work better. In the trees, black seems to work better. And the irons and the reds and stuff just don't seem to work particularly well for me. I generally scroll between white.
Birds are an interesting one too, because they're very well insulated. Typically, there's not a lot of meat on them, and they're wrapped in a feather doona, which is designed to contain as much of that heat to the animal as it can as well. So,
so that
super
colour is about finding the one that suits you, and that.
Yeah.
You find most models will have 4 to 6 options.
Yeah, they'll have a selection, and you just scroll through it. It seems that I wouldn't say it's universal, but what I've found anyway, having a look at a number of different types of different brands now because I use the scouting or the monocular style ones, is that the control panel's pretty similar. There's they have a similar layout. And so it's just about finding one that, suits your needs, and around that, in terms of, maybe there is, but I don't think any of them have, a hell of a lot more features than the others. They do seem to be, there seems to be a pretty contained range of features that you get in the handhelds.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, most of them are going to have digital zoom on them. In a lot of cases, particularly when you're talking about the lower end sensors, the digital zoom can be, you take a digital image and then you're zooming in on it. Once you zoom up a couple of times, it's going to look like Minecraft. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It really starts to pixelate up, so you lose that quality. The better sensor you've got, you might be able to get to 2 or 4 times while still maintaining a reasonable image. But again, going beyond that, you're really starting to lose that image quality as well. And some of that comes down to, as well, the decisions you make when you pick your device, much the same as the sort of things you look at when you look at a scope, like in terms of your base magnification. So if you're looking at a spotter, you really want something that's got a low base mag because you want to cover as much area as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can. But when you start talking about, shooting foxes at 150, 200 meters, you really want a higher base magnification so that, that lens is already, that picture's already set forward. So when you are, zooming it up, so you've still got a decent quality image when you're actually getting ready to take that target shot.
Yeah. Now, I've seen some of the thermals and night imaging and that I've seen they've got built-in recording, like video, taking videos and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do any of your products do those? Or?
That's pretty standard
across the majority of them. Now, some of them you will find may or may not capture audio, but most of them now will certainly allow you to capture video. Look, the benefits there are is obviously you can, share that experience with others, whether that's on social media or showing your mates and some of those kind of things as well. A lot of times now, different contracts will actually ask you to register that footage as proof to show that, show the animals that have been dispatched. Some other optics will allow you to capture the GPS location and a compass heading of where you were at that time. So you can actually show, okay, well, here's the area that I was, and here's the direction that I was shooting, and that was the game that I dispatched. Getting into some of that kind of stuff as well. Different other functions and features that you'll sort of notice between brands is laser range finding. So where this becomes really important with thermals is you're not looking through glass, you're looking at a TV, a little tiny, really high quality TV inside this unit. What it does is it makes it really hard to judge distance. Distance can be really hard to judge at night anyway. But when you trying to judge it through a TV, and maybe it's a property or an area of property that you're not familiar with, or maybe in your particular field of view you don't have a landmark that you can recognise to show that distance, you can actually push a button and, get a distance to your target. Some of them now will develop, a firing solution to those targets as well. So
really?
much like
ballistic calculators and things like that.
All that sort of technology is creeping into this stuff as well. I
know they can output to screens. You were talking about a lot of them can output to screens. Are they using a standard cable format to output, or are they going to micro HDMI or USB-C?
Most of them use an AV or HDMI, or they'll use proprietary apps. So probably another thing to check too with the thermals that you're using, if you've got an iPad specifically or an Android tablet specifically, is the optic that you're buying compatible with that particular device? Is there the ability to plug it in, or do you need to go and buy something else to facilitate that?
I'm thinking FPV drone goggles.
Oh, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
That'd be nice.
Fully immersive.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Because they've got HDMI input, don't they?
The HDMI
USB-C.
And USB-C,
yeah. Nice.
Some of them too. Now, so if you picture sitting in a vehicle as an example, and the shooter's running a thermal scope and you're the passenger, and because you're not there running the light or anything or doing anything anymore, you've actually got no idea what's going on through the, from a shooter's perspective. A lot of them now have got Wi-Fi output, so you can just on your phone or again to a screen have live the image of exactly what's happening through the optic, which can be a handy little thing to have. Some of the monoculars have a visible laser activation on them. So again, thinking about it in a practical sense, standing out in the middle of the paddock with, you're on the rifle and maybe you've got a torch or a spotlight set up, the guy with the binoculars calling in the fox, and he's saying to you, hey, get ready. He's going, well,
where is it? I can't see it.
where is it?
I don't know.
So you can
actually
zap it with a laser.
Yeah, zap it with a laser in terms of that's the general direction he's coming in at. And I'll tell you when to turn the torch or turn the lamp on when he's ready to be dispatched. So
yeah, because we one year down at Murrundi, we took the thermal out and a torch, and so there was two of us, and we were kind of doing this. There it is, and you could make it work as a in a spotlighting type of situation where if you you could tie them in together. It was a bit tricky with two of us and trying to figure things out, but we certainly could have made it work if we wanted to. If you were spotlighting, we were out looking for pigs and see if what we didn't take it in because all we found was deer, so we just kept going. A deer, there's no deer there. They were just standing there, so we just kept on walking past them.
Yeah.
Because one of the interesting things is you are immersed in darkness because you've got this thing that can. It's actually really weird how it penetrates darkness. It kind of I think it takes you optically it takes you a little bit of time to adjust too. I know that and I have heard that some guys say that they're not so great looking at that tiny screen for hours on end. It's not so great for your eyes, and I know you do lose night vision with it because you're looking into a bright light.
Lit up TV, yeah.
That's right. You're looking in a very small television, so as you describe it, so you do lose your night vision. But you can bring those things together if you were going out spotlighting for foxes or whatever you're going out for spotlighting for.
Putting that to a big iPad screen would certainly help.
Yeah,
It's
a nice experience. In my personal rig, I've got it set up to the same. So on the spotlight handle, got the power to the thermal on and off, so it's wired up to charge, wired down to a laptop screen in the passenger seat, and you can just swing it as fast, just as fast as you can swing a spotlight. We get pretty good detection out of that. It's about 800 metres on foxes, and that's that's more than enough for us. It's great, I think, to think of things like having all these detection ranges out to these huge distances, but you can't shoot those distances. And you certainly can't ID an animal or a potential target at those distances. You can, again, back to where we started, you know something's there, but what is it? Well, we don't know. As you get closer, you might be able to tell by the type of movement that it's doing or its general shape. But it can be hard too. Like I've been out on properties where I've been invited out, scanning with the thermal. Oh, yep, there's a fox there. He's about 200 out. I'll get on the whistle and shooters out there going, oh, yep, no worries. No, can't see it. What do you mean? Mate, I can see it right here. It's right here on the screen. Like, come back and, oh, yeah, it's there. No, can't see it. And it was, it actually turned out to be a hare at about 30 metres and not a fox at 200 metres. But, that's one of the challenges of the technology and its quality. And when you start playing with digital images, thermal really is the king of ID, of detection. But when it comes to that final target ID, there's been a lot of guys out there that have come unstuck because they thought something is something else, and it should be no different to any other type of shooting where that final target ID is
know what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
One thing I've never had any success with thermal is tracking blood. I thought it would work.
Yeah, I thought that'd be awesome.
It's proven to be very difficult to actually do.
Yeah, I don't think it would retain enough thermal property in itself, particularly when it's hit the ground, because it's going to take on the temperature of the ground quite quickly, and therefore the sensors aren't going to be able to tell the difference because there's no variance there. It's the same, so therefore it's invisible. Yeah,
I know, like where I'm in the Brisbane Valley at this time of year, the thermal really starts to become more of a thing that you're carrying just for the sake of carrying it, at about half an hour into first light. You do only get a very short window until the heat comes up and especially this time of year, the humidity comes up and you go, okay.
Yeah, this time of year, sure.
I think this is a game changer. And like just thinking about now, listening to you guys talking about how it be used, I think about how I typically hunt state forest. I'm up in the dark. I'm in my spot. I might have walked down a kilometre or so into a gully that I'm hunting, and I'm there before the sun or before first light. There's my opportunity to see if there are deer in my immediate area, or whether to walk away from that spot now and go and glass spot number 2 or spot number 3. I can see that being
I think it's an ideal,
super effective way. Yeah. And I know the exact place I'm going to sit and the exact place I'm going to try this thing out. I think it will be amazing. Which points me back to the deer management plan and the effectiveness that thermals will give in this scenario. State forest hunting is about controlling animals in the parks. It's not about preserving game. That's not the ultimate, desire for state forest hunting. This will enable people with the right budget to be more effective again.
Now, look, it's not going to land the shot. Sorry. It's not going to land the shot for you.
No.
That's it.
It's like giving away spot X, Mark. You can give away the best spot you got.
I mean,
people still got to hunt it. Yeah.
And look, it happened to me this last weekend. In the daylight, there's a deer. The other person, what deer? That deer. What deer? That one right there. So, these things still come into play. But as you said, Ian, the way I use it is for deer, I go, are they about? And if they are, okay, sit down, wait for light. The other thing is, because it's a cattle property and last couple of videos, is, there's wild dogs on there.
Yeah.
So I'm scanning horizon up high, seeing if the dogs are about. because I'm picking them up on trail cameras at night. I'm recording their howling. So I want to know, and I want to know where they are. And that thermal, because I'm no dog trapper, that might give me the edge on getting close to a wild dog, getting in position and waiting for the light to come up so I can take the shot.
Well, if we look at why people are buying, and the main reason people are investing in thermal is in and around improving efficiency. So how do I see more than what I'm seeing now? It's no different to investing in a good quality pair of binoculars, because or you hope you're actually going to see more and it's going to make you a more efficient hunter. This is just taking that stuff, another level. It might be the farmer that, really only got limited time. I want to be able to, drive around and check the paddocks, for foxes in 30 minutes rather than driving around for 2 hours. It might be, the professional shooter who wants to get out there and take more game in a shorter period of time because it, increases his profitability. It might be, people like me who only get out very limited time, so they want to make the most efficient use of the time they got by taking as much as they can. So efficiency is probably the main driver in that space. And look, there's a bit of cool gadget factor probably playing into it a little bit as well, but certainly, efficiency is the biggest thing that people are looking for in this space by getting these things.
Well, I think, going back to something you said before, trying to get these items into people's hands, to have a look at them, to understand how they work, to be able to make an informed decision before they buy is a really difficult part of what you're doing. I'm excited to bring some of these into the camp that we're hosting. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for people to do just that. There's a lot of talk about thermal. There's a lot of talk about how it's going to function in state forest. And this will be a really great, situation for 30-odd people to be able to have a look and understand the various different types that there are. So really do appreciate the support around that. It's just going to be a magic time. And it'll add another layer to some of the videos that we can bring too. I think if you can do some of the pre-dawn, capture of things. And I might just be able to stop my dog chasing a wombat before it's too late, because she does like to follow up.
She does like to chase those wombats, mate.
Well, not chase them, but Take me to wombat holes is
Yeah.
just a pain in the ass. So that's really interesting. Have you got any other questions about thermals, guys? I think that's a
No, I
really
think
great
it's
introduction.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's pretty
Yeah.
good.
All right. Well, we might call it at that for tonight, Ben. I think we've covered a bunch of stuff that I really wanted to talk about, and it was great to have you on. We'll air this one really soon so that people get the opportunity to understand what's coming. And if people want to get hold of you, other than the corporate redneck at Instagram, how do people get hold of you? Do you want to rattle off a couple of the brands so people will know what you're representing?
So we're currently working with Infrared, Nitec, Red Shield, Army Tech, ProEase. There's a number of others. You can find us on the www.gfpa.com.au, which runs through our brands. We've got a dealer network right throughout Australia, so chances are your guys out there, your local dealer either has our products or has access to our products. So have a chat to your local dealer about the stuff that might interest you, and and maybe really encourage your local dealer too to speak to us about hosting a night vision night and do some of the work similar to like you guys are doing, where we can actually come along and bring a whole raft of devices and find an area local to them where we can actually experience the stuff at night and try and simulate as best we can the sort of uses that these people want to use them for, and get 10 devices in their hands to look at rather than maybe the one or two that's on the shelf.
Definitely.
Great idea.
Very
Lots
cool.
of clubs.
For sure.
Lots of clubs looking for guest speakers and content to come along to make the
that's right.
meetings interesting. Yeah.
We're happy to work with any of those, people, and certainly, through with, trying to help support some of the stuff with the National Feral Deer Management Scheme. So if people want to understand a little bit more about thermal and how it can actually assist with that, if there's any, people involved in any of those bodies that are doing any of that work, we're happy to support in that space as well. I know they're starting to talk about introducing, particular possibly education type camps for involving recreational shooters in that stuff. So where we can try and help and throw a bit of gear around and help try and find the right solutions for people, more than happy to support it.
Amazing.
Awesome. That's good.
Awesome.
Very cool.
All right. Well, we'll call it at that. Thank you again for coming on. It's been a really good couple of hours of conversation, and I'm sure people get a lot out of it. So
Definitely.
keep in touch.
I really enjoy it. For me, I'm quite a newbie to thermal, so it's pretty quite an education piece for me.
Yeah, there's a lot more to cover off. There's a lot more to cover off. If people are interested, there's quite a few people in arm's reach of me that have got a lot of other experience and exposure to it. So if people are interested, then maybe have a chat to a few of those guys as well, or we can bring them along to a few of the events.
That'd be great.
It's awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Cool.
We'll keep in touch, and we'll get this one out ASAP.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
No problem, mate.
G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire podcast. My name's Mark, and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away, or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting.